friends. In this new video, we will analyze an excessively brutal topic. An issue that concerns us all, and that has been hidden and misrepresented for millennia. A topic that has all to do with everything we have talked about on this channel for several months. With alchemy, with energy, with nature, and with the cycles of alchemical and radiant transformation that function and provide all life. We saw how radiant energy charges matter with primal energy. Energy to start a cycle. We also saw how the gems are radiant energy in stasis. I also mention a little about the legend of the Philosopher's Stone and its contained energies. Very similar to what current science proves to us. In this video, I will give you an introduction to what the sun really is. Just an introduction, since I will address it in a greater depth later. However, considering the previous videos, I think we can now understand a little better the nature and alchemy behind such impressive majesty that we observe daily. Let's start. In the previous video, we analyzed the coincidences that exist between the different levels of existence, between the macro and the micro. We have also already seen how there is natural alchemy and artificial alchemy. How all current technological inventions are based on alchemy and on all natural processes which scientists only seek to emulate. For example, we already talked about how one element is transmuted into another, purifying and separating their internal elements by heating up and evaporating. Disintegrated. In other words, the lightest and purest part of that compound is transformed into a lighter version of itself. The energy itself that returns to the source. It volatilizes and goes up. In this same way, the air layers are stacked by density. The lighter and purer gases go to the top, while the denser gases settle to the bottom. Oxygen, being heavier, groups down very close to Earth. For this reason, the higher we go, the more difficult it is to breathe, since there is less oxygen. Also, the temperature is lower, but with higher radiation, due to the lack of denser gases that absorb. For this reason, on a mountain like Everest, it is easier to suffer burns from radiation than from heat, cause there is no gases that can absorb UV radiation. So, all energy is radiation, even the cold one. But what does heat and cold really is? Well, heat is a type of radiation which can cause burns equally when it occurs at high intensities. Heat as such is energy resulting from alchemy and which can produce ionizations in our skin. Burns, very similar to radioactive ones, but with less intensity and absorption. Although the sensation of heat and cold are different, both phenomena affect the ionization of the atoms and molecules in our skin, which can cause cell damage and burns if exposed to extreme levels of temperature. Fire itself is plasma. Plasma, as we are told, is the fourth state of matter. This is not entirely true, cause there is more. Plasma is ionized gas, imbued with electromagnetic force. This plasma state is achieved by a mixture of gases. That is to say, extremely pure and rising elements. Elements called noble gases, which rise and mix in accordance with the radiant cycles and density. They ionize and unite through alchemy, forming a great light in a form of radiant energy that is renewed by the cycle of positive and negative charges. Everything I tell you is based on science. In a science not well known, and which seems to be hidden. The plasma itself can be generated in a microwave by a simple experiment. An experiment which increases the radiation considerably, showing the operation of the sun itself as natural geoalchemy with noble gases, recharging the sun in a cycle that could seem infinite. The microwave and the sun itself, both as an alchemical and electromagnetic device, which seeks to emulate the radiant energies that, when interacting with oxygen, generate heat, boiling those oxygen molecules present in the water of the food. In this way, the sun itself would not be a ball of molten rock, neither lava or something like that. Rather, it is a mixture of ionized plasmatic gases that generates radiant energies and other waves, in the manner of all visible and invisible light that exists in the day, generating the tides and winds through this thermal interaction. Also, the moon has its own interactions. But let's continue. Human beings have always marveled of this powerful and unknown light, wondering what could be so mysterious flare, wondering if it will be a god or some supreme energy. The reality is very simple, but at the same time, very complex. Cause obviously, the sun is also alchemy. Energy produced through the communion and struggle of its contained primal charges. Now tell me, do you know how this thing works? Now we will see something shocking that will confirm to all of you that the sun is not what they tell us, and how microalchemy is present in everything. Watch these, friends. How a light bulb only works in the absence of oxygen. As soon as oxygen enters it, the filaments oxidize by ionizing the oxygen. Thus, this system can only produce light in a vacuum. Since it has two tungsten filaments that make up the circuit and through an electric current passes, getting red hot and creating a plasma bridge between both filaments. Thus, incandescent light bulbs are also made of plasma, currently being filled with a gas called krypton. White light bulbs are those that contain xenon, another noble gas, very pure and bright. also requiring the absence of oxygen. All current light bulbs depend on the ionization of these gases and a medium that prevents them from oxidizing. Let's remember how oxygenation would be a process that provides us with life, and, at the same time, each breath brings us closer to the transition. Do you see how all the alchemical laws are fulfilled, from the micro to the macro? Just like a light valve. Same alchemy. Different scales of energetic power. The sun would then necessarily require a physical barrier on the outside that contains the noble gases inside, but letting them enter freely, absorbing them and renewing the cycle. One of those noble gases is radon, a radioactive gas that we already talked about in past videos, and which arises from the disintegration or spontaneous purification of rocks. These very pure noble gases rise up to the solar chromosphere, entering somehow and reacting alchemically. According to my research, the sun must be hollow, having inside a special kind of radioactive gem. A gem capable of ionizing the noble gases absorbed from all of the alchemical cycles, producing a tremendous radiant light. An eternal light. At this point, I think it's no longer necessary to mention that this channel does not agree with the cosmogonic vision imposed by the Jesuit Illuminati governments. We trust in observation and in the results that we can verify through experimentation. Like the crepuscular rays and their triangulation. That tells us that the sun is much closer than they affirm. Circling around us and around the still star known as Polaris. If you are on this channel, you should already know about all the Jesuit lies that current astronomy has imposed on us. From Maximilian Hell, who was accused of falsifying his results regarding the distance of the path between Venus and the Sun. A false measurement that continues to be used as a scientific basis even today. Even Copernicus, and his good relationship with his uncle, Lucas Watson-Rod, Prince Bishop of Worms. In that way, all heliocentrism was an invention of the Church for people to become atheists. I don't know if you know that this usurping Church seeks the exact opposite of what they profess. In this way, heliocentrism seeks to separate us from alchemy, hide it between lucubrated and invented scientific dogmatisms, making it incomprehensible. Returning to theoretical science, an imperialistically imposed dogma. But let's not deviate. The sun, then, when its energetic particles hit the oxygen molecules, produces the same effect as in a microwave. Heat. Energy that always seeks to be in balance, but without achieving it. Releasing energy in the form of radiation. Radiant energy. Ionizing energy. Just like the plasma fire, as propitiator of that same material purification. This by increasing said heat energy to an intolerable level. producing ionizations, as cellular burns, by removing electrons, by separating them, transforming matter into something lighter and purer. For this reason, for ancient alchemists, fire was always considered a purifier. That's why everything that is exposed to fire loses a part of itself. And energetic particles that emanate and return to the source. We saw in the previous video how wood is transformed into coal, freeing itself from the water present in its microstructure. Such water becomes a gas, something lighter and purer, and it ascends to the sky as vapor that condenses back to Earth. Do you see it? Same alchemical laws. That is why the previous video was called Flesh, Coal and Carbon. Since all those things like rocks and wood are actually allotropes of carbon. We can understand this extrapolating the phenomenon called carbonization. Let's see how the meat carbonizes. Anything that is made of carbon can be carbonized. Fossilize. Fossilization is a natural process in which organic remains are transformed into crystalline minerals over time. This process involves the preservation of the bone form, or even flesh, through mineralization, in which organic materials are replaced and filled with minerals of the surrounding rock. Carbonization, on the other side, is a physical process that is often associated with fossilization. It occurs when organic matter is exposed to high temperatures and pressures and partially decomposes, leaving behind a layer of carbon. This layer can act as a mold that conserves the external shape of the dead organism and facilitates its preservation. So, carbonization is a type of process that enhances fossilization. Although not all fossils are the result of this process, but all fossilization is a process on which its energy form is conserved. The energy related to its elemental material. Soon we will talk about the carbon cycle, and all this will better understood. How this whole ecosystem works so perfectly. In this way, the sun is not a god. Although, it does provide the necessary energy for life and transformations to be possible. The sun, as a plasmatic and radiant energy generator. Nuclear and radioactive in its divine alchemical essence. The sun, roughly and bluntly, would be this: a giant light bulb that marks the energy cycles of charge and discharge, that provides us with the divine energy that makes life possible. That marks the pattern of time itself through its movement. Without the sun, none of the alchemical cycles could work. That is why a large part of ancient cultures considered it as a deity. Some kind of lieutenant, in charge of making all life flourish. Currently we can see how for a greenhouse there are different special sources. They all work on the same principle of a plasmatic arc and a noble gas in a vacuum, thus seeking to emulate the different wave frequencies and the heat produced by the sun, which also uses noble gases for its operation. Gases such as helium and radioactive radon. Within electromagnetic radiation, visible light is the only part that we can see. The color of light depends on its wavelength or frequency. White light possesses within itself all the necessary colors. Being that the plants occupy mostly the blue and red color to grow. Something interesting that I will mention here is the fact that plants do not grow in green light. Green light is sometimes used as a tool to elicit specific plant responses, such as stomatal control, phototropism, and photomorphogenetic growth. When combined with blue and red wavelengths, green light allows understanding of the plant's physiological activity. The function of green light is less well known than the other spectra, and there are only certain plant species that require green light for normal growth. The reason for this is that the plants themselves are green. Reason why green light is reflected by the plant itself, preventing its absorption. This is proof that the colors we see are not just a product of our mind. They are real for all the energy matter. In this way, we can see how the colors themselves are reactives, reacting and sending information through electromagnetic waves to all energetic matter. Later we will talk in depth about these electromagnetic waves and what they really are. But for now I'm only interested in you to understanding that the sun is an energy emanation, and therefore a consequence of the alchemy. This alchemy, as we have already seen, arises from the energetic union of those noble gases present in the atmosphere. But what are these gases in reality? Well, are crystals. I explain. The first of these gases, we are told, was discovered by Sir William Ramsay and Lord Rayleigh in 1895, who noted that chemical nitrogen was lighter than atmospheric nitrogen. After analyzing it, they realized that this atmospheric nitrogen contained another element inside, isolating or purifying for the first time the element called argon. In other words, purifying is separate and then rejoin with their equal. Later, they discovered helium, named like that in honor of the Greek god of the sun, Helios. All these noble gases can also be called crystalline gases. Do you see it? All those gases unite inside the sun, feeding him and causing nuclear plasmatic reactions within the sun itself, generating an enormous amount of radiant energy, which is released into the atmosphere as visible and invisible light, as radiation. Light powers invisible to us, like UV rays, which, like green light, are not made for us. Thus, the sun itself and its functioning are a fundamental part of geoalchemy. Also producing molten iron as a residue accumulated on its surface. This iron tends to bubble from within, accumulating and being expelled from time to time, along with intense electromagnetic radiation. Today we call these iron residues ejected by the sun meteorites. That's why we never see a meteor coming from below. This is something that had never been explained by the flat earth theorists. The operation or explanation of the existence of meteorites on a flat earth, covered by an energy barrier. This barrier, or dome, is what makes atmospheric pressure possible. In other words, the concentration of gases necessary for electromagnetism to ionize them and produce plasma. Just like the microwave. But then, why am I saying that the sun must have a radioactive gem inside? Well, first of all, because of its long life cycle. Remember the diamond's beta-voltaic batteries that last 5,000 years? Inside the sun would be a radiant gem. The three of the philosopher's stones connected to an electromagnetic generator. A gear force that provides us the necessary magnetism. Polaris, or the point of convergence, would act as its central axis. Like that point, which around all the constellations revolve. Those luminaries, that in ancient stories were taken as if they were portals to higher dimensions. A connection with the divinities. Thus, the sun and the moon would complete the toroidal energy cycle. Cycle that connects both with the upper and lower plane. Site that the alchemists call the point of convergence. The Black Pyramid, from which all electromagnetism emanates and which makes possible all the solar reactions of life. Soon I will tell you more about this impressive and mysterious site, of the greatness that its existence entails, and of the generative powers used in his mighty creation. It's time to wake up to all those wonderful hidden majesty of life and creation. Strive to leave better people in this world. Only we, the awakened ones, can make a difference. Let's educate children so they know there is a purpose bigger than themselves, so that they carry out each thought and action, directing it towards the future. Gold, as a solar metal, is the real money. So it would work as a way to direct our will, to gratify people who of their own free will decide to follow your path, your lead, so they can live off helping you with your labor. The current problem turns out to be the purity of human goals, their education. Give wealth to a mean, and he will become a tyrant. Give wealth to a good being, and it will change the world. Give wealth to an awake and wise being, and he will create an utopia. Thanks for being there, friends. This will be more than a channel. Let's share. We speak the truth, and we will be heard. You just have to wake up from the great deception. The system does not work. Time to get out. Reactive Factory Project.